Did you know that we have members of Congress who've been in Washington for 40 plus years? Did you know that some members of Congress are being prescribed Alzheimer's medication? Today, I want to convince you that establishing term limits for United States congressmen is vitally important. I wholeheartedly believe this, and I'm not alone. According to Rasmussen Reports, October 26, 2016, a national survey found that 74% of Americans favor establishing term limits for all members of Congress. I became interested in term limits after I read an article on PBS.org, October 14, 2017. It was about Mike Kim, congressional pharmacist who fills as many as 100 prescriptions a day for members of Congress. He stated, "At first it's cool, and then you realize I'm filling some drugs for some very serious health problems, like Alzheimer's. And these are the people that are running the country." It makes you kind of sit back and say, wow, they're making the highest decisions in the land, and they might not even remember what happened yesterday. His comment got me really interested in finding out everything I could about term limits. Despite the unwillingness of Congress to set term limits, most Americans feel they would help prevent corruption and reduce influence of special interest. They would also help to infuse new ideas and to find people who would get things done for the good of our country instead of trying to preserve their power, prestige, and their well-paying jobs. Let's talk about the reason term limits. Most people feel with good reason that corruption is rampant in Washington, D.C. Special interest groups have too much power and Congress needs new ideas. Being a member of Congress wields an awesome amount of power. As the years go by, that power can lead to corruption. According to Steve Cross of CBS News, June 11, 2012, members of Congress often trade stock based on non-public information from Capitol Hill. Many have made well-timed stock market trades in the very industries that they regulate. Most former congressmen and senators manage to leave Washington, if they leave Washington, with more money in their pockets than when they arrived. Big business often hires lobbyists that spend vast amounts of money on lawmakers' re-election campaigns in the hopes of influencing lawmakers' policy decisions and votes. Congress needs new ideas. People holding the same seat for years leads to stagnation, and the status quo becomes the norm. New people are more likely to think outside the box and come to Washington with "I'm going to make a difference" attitude. Term limits should be implemented in the following ways. First, limit senators to 2 terms for a total of 12 years and hold elections every 2 years for a third of the Senate seats. This would ensure continuity. Secondly, House members would be limited to 3 terms for a total of 6 years. Elections would also be staggered and held every 2 years for a third of the House seats. What would Congress look like if term limits were imposed? Well, we would have more confidence in our elected officials. Politics would no longer be considered a lucrative career, but a temporary opportunity to make a difference for fellow citizens. Term limits would reduce the need to raise campaign funds, minimize the opportunity for corruption, prevent congressmen from amassing too much power, and diminish the influence of special interest. As fresh faces rotate through the halls of Congress, new ideas would be offered, and the status quo that grips Washington would be challenged. Congressmen would have renewed determination to get the job done. Why? Because they wouldn't have to worry about getting reelected. Their days on the Hill would be numbered. What can we do to make this happen? Well, clearly we are fighting an uphill battle. Not many congressmen want to vote themselves out of office, but uphill battles have been won before, and here are some ways we can do that. 1, we could call or write congressmen. If you don't know who they are, just go to congress.gov and do a search. They're easy to find. Secondly, sign petitions at termlimits.com and termlimitsforuscongress.com. 3, join U.S. Term Limits Online for the latest updates. They even have a Facebook page. 4, support legislation. Several resolutions proposed and amendment to the Constitution have been introduced. One by our own Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Go to U.S. Senate Online to read it. 5, political science expert Larry Sabato wrote a book in 2007 that is still relevant today. It's titled A More Perfect Constitution. In it, he proposes using an Article 5 convention to amend the Constitution to include term limits and completely bypass Congress. Until we can all get behind this movement, I'm afraid it will be business as usual in Washington. But it doesn't have to be. I urge you to get out and get involved today.